Hello, hello. Welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict, coming to you live from Dallas, Texas. My co-host and I are so excited to be here, like we do every Friday for live stream. So, welcome everybody.
And as we always do, we want to thank all of you for your comments. David and I have talked, and we're getting an enormous motivational feedback from you all. And you're also giving us information that we couldn't get anyplace else. We're truly grateful for the education we're getting.
Well, indeed, Russ, because some of our viewers they're right there. So they have a first-hand knowledge of what's going on. And when they share those information with us, we kind of learn from it. So we also want to thank our Patreon members for their continued support and also appreciating their commitment to this. And for you, if you truly like our videos and you want to demonstrate your support, consider joining our Patreon membership. And we thank you all for all your support. So,
well, we've got some pretty good stories for the day.
Certainly. But actually, before we launch into this, we want to do some housekeeping stuff. We need to share some information with our viewers here. So what we're gonna be, just some few points I want to talk to you about, guys, is we will be having some guests coming soon. We are working on scheduling the stuff, and some of the guests will be specific domain, like financial market, if you will. And what we decided to do is we're gonna have a part of the Geopolitics in Conflict show as a whole, but a segment that is called the Money Show. Basically, that's where we're gonna have all our interviews pertaining to the financial market. Our producer Elizabeth will be joining me on those interviews, so she's very familiar with that kind of stuff. So and she's a producer, so she has an understanding of all this, and she will be joining on that. The second thing has to do with the course offering. Yes, we will be offering a course or courses very, very soon. Those pertain to geopolitics, regional areas, specific countries that will bring a wealth of information, especially for the business community. And so we're gonna be offering that soon. And the last point I want to talk about is our Patreon members. We will be having live Zoom presentation to our Patreon members about geopolitics in the 21st century. This one's going to go a little bit more into depth, far beyond what we do in our videos. And we are scheduling this presentation for our Patreon members on Saturday, the 24th at 1100 hours or 11 o'clock Central Time, 4 p.m. GMT. So if you are interested, consider joining our Patreon members membership, that is, so you can have access to all that. So with that said, we want to thank you, and let's move on to our
questions of the day. Well, our topic today is going to be around Afghanistan and the Chinese opportunity, or a lot of risks involved. But so much has happened this week.
And that's correct, Ross.
Turkey has taken on guarding the Kabul airport.
And it was surprising to me that Turkey was tasked with that. Well, was he tasked or did he volunteer? But there is the catch. There is a catch into all that. What does Turkey has? Turkey is a Muslim country. So the thinking of NATO was, if we leave a Muslim country in charge of Kabul airport, we're still going to have a semi-presence, if you will. I don't know how the Taliban is going to interpret that, but they already warned that any foreign forces will be considered as invaders.
That means Turkey is in trouble.
Yeah. If we were advising the Turkish government, we will say, you might want to think twice about this. So.
Well, possible peace talks in Islamabad.
Oh, that is an interesting one. It was not reported much on in the West. As a matter of fact, I just find that out this morning. So, and I find out through the ambassador of Pakistan in Washington, D.C. So what's interesting about that is that usually there's supposed to be talks in Doha, in Qatar, between the Taliban and the central government. Doha is going to manage that. Now Islamabad is stepping up and saying, well, we're going to have our peace talks right here. Well, it makes perfect sense because Pakistan is concerned about the refugees from Afghanistan into Pakistan.
And there are certainly a lot of them.
Exactly. But there is a catch to all this. Pakistan has a good relationship with China. China is in Afghanistan. You can just see what the movements are or the moves that Pakistan is trying to do. So it's a good initiation from Pakistan.
Well, you can certainly tell that the American position in all of this has dramatically changed in that is in the Middle East. The United States has now initiated talks that they formally rejected in terms of prisoner exchange with Iran.
I know, this was surprising to me because just to let you know, those talks are not a direct talk between Iran and the United States. Those are indirect, and in which the United States offered Iran to swap the prisoners. But here is the thing. Iran offered that same proposal back in 2016, but the United States turned it down. And basically what the United States is trying to do is trying to figure out a way of how to salvage whatever if they can go to Iran through the prisoner swaps. But I don't think so Iranians will buy it because Iran's interest is in nuclear deal. That's all.
Well, we're certainly seeing Lebanon descend into disorder or chaos. It's a real mess.
Oh, Lebanon is going into some very, very bad direction. What I never understood, I understood a little bit given my academic background about the Middle East. Lebanon has a lot of sects into it. So because their government, the way it's structured, you can't just have Sunnis, you can't have just the Shiites. I mean, you have to consider the Maronites, the Alawites, the Sunnis, the Shiites, the other, there are so many ethnicity or sects into the government. And the problem in Lebanon is that, that's considered at the heart of the Middle East. Anytime you destabilize Lebanon, we all remember what happened in 1982 with the bombing of the U.S. barracks in Beirut.
Yeah, a couple of hundred Marines were
killed. Exactly. Yeah. So,
well, we're also seeing OPEC has finally come to a deal.
Indeed. The United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia finally reached the deal because that's why if you noticed, especially for some of our viewers here in the United States, if you noticed, gas prices were up. Now they're going down a little bit. They finally reached an agreement regarding production for next month and actually for the whole next 6 months. So I'm glad to see that because a lot of us travel in the summer. So it'd be nice to have low prices when it comes down to gas. So.
David, I'm going to really shock you now. Are you ready?
Sure.
Inflation is up in the United States. I know you haven't noticed, but...
Oh, I know. And yet the Federal Reserve, because here is the issue in the U.S. The Federal Reserve does not know what to do anymore. So basically what they are saying, the government, the U.S. government is saying, oh, no. This is transitory. It's just, no, it's not. The inflation is here to stay. It's getting worse. Prices went up by 5%, 5.14%. That's what the government's saying.
Yeah. Well, when I go to the store, I can tell you it's more than that.
Yeah. So the government is not telling the American people the truth about where this goes, this economy. And, with all the money printing and all that, we all say, we're going to have, by the way, we're working on having a guest who knows this great deal, and you guys are going to benefit from his insight. He's world-renowned individual. So
there are some really knowledgeable people out there who are giving us a pretty dire prediction as to where inflation's going.
Yeah, well, and we're going to have one of those on our show right here.
Well, we think that America is ending the longest war in American history.
Yeah. Oh, are we getting into our topic right now?
Unless there's something else you want to say. The main
no.
topic of the day.
Yeah. No, all I wanted to say to our viewers, like we always do, please, when you send your question, just make sure you write questions so we know which one is which, and we appreciate that one. All right, let's get into our topic. China and Afghanistan.
China and Afghanistan. When the U.S. withdraws, which it is doing remarkably quickly, what kind of an opportunity is this for China? Because we know that Afghanistan is loaded with minerals.
A lot. Well, this one has so many directions it can take. And I can see, as a matter of fact, which has not been reported much, that China had Afghanistan on its site as a strategic for some time. But they didn't want to do anything because the US and NATO members were there.
They also had some contracts for mining there, didn't they?
Yeah.
But they didn't execute on them yet.
They do have some. So the reason why we wanted to talk about this topic today is given, and we'll do it for about 20-25 minutes and open up the floor for your questions, as we always do. The reason why we personally decided, this will be a great topic for our viewers to have an understanding about. When you look at where the whole dynamics going on in that part of the world right now. Remember, we did a video about India-China tensions on the border.
Oh, yeah.
We did a video about the Gwadar port. And we did a video way back about ASEAN and China. All those dynamics is playing a role. But at that time, the US did not withdraw yet from. Now, conditions on the ground have changed. With the US withdrawal,
right,
China moved in. And rightly so. If we are to advise the Chinese government, I said, hey, you might want to consider establishing a relationship with the Taliban because it's a foregone conclusion. The West does not want to admit to that. The Taliban, as a matter of fact, some intelligence agencies, without naming names, some intelligence agencies predicts now that the government in Kabul will fall within 6 months, which falls in line with what we said in our video that give it by the end of the year, and Taliban will run over Kabul. They already control about 86% of the country.
14 to go.
Yeah. So you can just see it makes perfect sense for the Taliban, for the China rather, to consider moving in. Now, what we need to highlight is the risks involved in China getting into some area that it's going to be very, very challenging if they don't manage the relationship properly.
Well, we know that they're not going in militarily. They're going in to do business there, where money is involved, where infrastructure is involved, and where it's a possible win-win scenario.
And that is the key, Ross. That is the key to China's success if they approach it that way. As a matter of fact, we're going to share with our viewer quotes by the Taliban. His name is Shaheen. Suhail Shaheen. Suhail Shaheen is the Taliban spokesperson. He speaks English, by the way, fluently. And he said, and I quote,
China's friendly?
Yeah. He said, China is a friend, is a friendly country, and we would welcome it for reconstruction and developing Afghanistan. Right there, it tells you that the Taliban tone towards China is different than towards any other Western. They don't want any other foreigners anyway. But for China to them, it's a different story.
And this seems to be a common story across so much of the world concerning China.
Because when, as you rightly said, Ross, when they get in for business. They don't care about your religion. They don't care about your political ideology. They don't care about your social structure. They are not there to promote democracy or promote whatever ideology. They don't care for all that stuff. They are there for the business.
Right.
Yeah. And the Taliban is seeing an opportunity into this because they know what China is capable of doing. They are witnessing what's taking place right now in Pakistan.
Let me ask you a clarifying question about China, because I've wondered about this a lot. In places like, well, we've seen 56 different major minority groups.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at any place that China is, they seem to respect whatever's going on there. They respect the culture, they respect the history, they respect basically what's going on. So we don't need to change it. Is that your experience? Because you've looked at this a long time.
Yeah, and I've been there. So I saw the problem for us as Americans, when I say American government or military, whatever you want to call it, is that when we go into another culture, we're trying to impose our way of life. It just doesn't work. I had one day way back, I remember when I was in Iraq, and I had a conversation with some high-ranking officer and all that, and I kind of made it clear that the approach we are dealing with here, it's not the right one. And I said, well, what do you mean by that, David? I said, well, you have to understand the history of this culture. Yes, you might read a book or two, but that doesn't qualify you as very knowledgeable about the culture that traces back its history thousands of years.
Right.
So, and this is the mistake the United States made in Iraq, they made in Afghanistan. You can impose your will. China approaching it differently. China's coming in saying from the get-go, here is what we plan on doing. If you want infrastructure, we'll work together. Of course, China has to look after its own interest,
which they're very good at.
Yeah. And the Taliban also have to look after, because can you imagine if, it's not if, when Taliban and China decided on the infrastructure and all that stuff, how that's going to make Taliban looks in the eyes of Afghanis. See what I mean?
Their opinion will rise.
Exactly.
Rise.
Exactly. Because that is the question now they are asking, what happened? We didn't see any improvements.
Quite the contrary.
Yeah. And let alone, we don't want to admit for us that we just mismanaged,
for 20 years.
Yeah.
Where's the infrastructure development? Where is the benefit to the Afghan people, the United States being there? We certainly don't see much.
No, not at all. So the Chinese approach to the Taliban and the Chinese approach to Afghanistan through Taliban, I think it's the right move on part of it's a strategic move. China's thinking about how to secure certain natural resources, like you mentioned, and there are about few of them that they have to address in all those.
How about coal? How about cobalt? How about gas? How about copper? How about gold? How about lithium? How about mercury?
Yeah,
all of those things
all those are very
in Afghanistan.
Exactly. And the advantage to China is what? Proximity.
Oh,
It's just close, because in the northeast part of Afghanistan, it's only about 100 kilometers borderline between Janzang and Janzin. How you pronounce it?
Janzang.
Yeah, between that one and Afghanistan. But China also has a concerns. That is the reason why they want to do what they want to do.
You don't think of terrorism and exporting it to...
Exactly. They don't want those kind of issues. They are thinking in terms of, as a matter of fact, the government, Chinese that is, announced, the media controlled by the Chinese government, mentioned that there is a possibility that China might send its military to seal the border. This is where the Taliban came up with that statement.
Yeah.
Because they want to ensure China, you don't have to worry if you are coming here for business only. And I think personally, as one who spent time in Afghanistan and I understand a little bit about how the Taliban operates, I think China can literally benefits from this because when you think of Afghanistan, who do you think controlling Afghanistan? It's the Taliban.
Yes.
Whether we like it or not. They are a force to reckon with. You can't ignore the Taliban just because whatever. So I believe China is looking at it strategically, and it will make perfect sense later along. It's part of the big plan, the BRI.
Let me ask you this, because am I correct in that whatever the forces, Taliban or whoever, they were actually exporting terrorism into the Uyghurs and other population in Xinjiang province? Do you have any information about that?
No, I do not.
Okay,
I do not, and I'm not aware of all that one.
Okay.
I mean, all it is the one that I know about the Taliban is how they developed their ideology that came through an ideological war between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
Okay, between
Shiites and Sunnis. Well, when you think of Saudi Arabia, what do you think of? Wahhabism.
Yep.
And Wahhabism is an extreme form of Sunni Islam. So there are also Shiites in Afghanistan. So both of them, Saudi Arabia and Iran, were fighting ideologically in Afghanistan way back till the United States supported the Taliban, and the Saudis provided billions of dollars. So that's usually so. One of the, as I said again, one of the advantages that the China has into all this is that if they make it clear, if we are to advise them, say, make it clear to the Taliban, you are here to do A, B, C, and D. Give them a timeline, get your projects done, ensure that your benefits are protected and secured, and that's it. Because otherwise, it's not going to go well.
What do you think is important for our viewers to understand about this situation?
Well, it just, this is not an easy move. It's a geopolitical one because that'll impact the regional countries. There are, like, for example, reports coming out of the Pentagon in the United States saying that, well, Afghanistan has about 300,000 strong army men. They can secure the country. The neighboring countries, they said, we don't think so, because you've seen soldiers, Afghani soldiers, are fleeing and leaving their posts. Taliban are fighters.
Yeah.
They don't fear death. They just have no fear of that. So it's just the way they are. So the idea of China getting involved, it's a strategic one. And if China plays its card right, because you can ignore Afghanistan. Afghanistan geostrategically means a lot, and it opens up the path for China to avoid going around the Indian Ocean to move its merchandise. Now you can go directly there.
Put you on the spot again.
Yeah.
Favorite thing to do.
That's what a co-host does.
Do you see the possibility that the Chinese are really going to be a peacemaker here in the region?
In what sense? Peace regarding?
Well, there's some contention between Pakistan and the Taliban, although they're friends and not friends.
Yeah.
And with the economy being improved and the Taliban looking better and better to the eyes of the Afghani people, this is going to really cause more stability and the inspiration for people to get along better because they get to economically benefit.
Well, because if the Afghani people start seeing the developments taking place, yes, it will benefit the Taliban, because Taliban has the advantage of securing that those projects will be completed.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the big advantage, because can you imagine doing a project in an unstable region with no force that can maintain order?
Right.
That's the problem. So if Taliban, it's not if, but Taliban can provide that environment for China's companies to, mind you, that there are some Chinese companies that have already been involved in Afghanistan. One of them was drilling for oil since 2011. Other ones reserves the right for mining in Afghanistan. Now the opportunity presents itself. So once again, China playing its card right, it will benefit from it. And given all what's taking place on a global level, and this is one thing we're gonna do the presentation on a Patreon, is we're gonna get into this because this is a geopolitical move that truly reflects how things are gonna be in the 21st century, and we intend to do this presentation through our Patreon website there.
You see the chain of command of the Taliban strong enough that there are leaders that could really marshal all the forces and really cause peace and cooperation.
For Taliban?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They do.
Tight chain of command.
Yeah, because the central government in Kabul, they can't maintain Kabul, as you know, we make a joke about it. I remember back in 2005, I was there one time, and Hamid Karzai used to be the president of Kabul. Yeah, and he wanted to go out of the presidential palace, and I because he couldn't move without the presence of American protection. And we joked at the time. I said, the president of Kabul wants to move somewhere, because we used to evaluated him as president of Kabul. He couldn't go out elsewhere, because we know that you go there, they'll kill you. Straightforward. So yeah, the Taliban has that kind of strength to impose that. The question will be for China, beside the business, do you have any other intentions? And they need to clarify. I can't stress enough, once again, if we are to advise the Chinese government, whatever you do, do not Do not get involved in how Afghani people live, how they dress, how they talk, how that's their lifestyle, that's their country, that's their traditions, those are their customs. You get into that. This is one thing we did not understand.
Right.
And we failed miserably. This is why our foreign policy, the United States foreign policy, is so fragmented, because we lack in that core understanding of the regions we operate in. You send in an ambassador from Washington to whatever country A, and the ambassador hang out in the office at the embassy. What kind of ambassador is that? Let alone that the ambassador himself. I'm not generalizing. I have friends who are former ambassadors. I shall not generalize. They are wonderful individuals, but there are some that they have no clue about the countries where they are serving, because they got the possession through political donations, through favoritism, and so forth.
One of the themes that we've done for almost a year now is the rights and dignity of other people. And that means we don't have to impose our opinions or our way of life on anybody.
And we shouldn't. We shouldn't, because that becomes the question of, are you morally superior to other countries?
Clearly, we are not.
Yeah. To me, it's like I gave the example last time. One time I was in Yemen, I remember, and I went outside the city in the outskirts. It's places with no running water, is that makes those people less than me? No. Just because they don't have running water, they are inferior? No, they're not. And they were so hospitable, so wonderful people. They spoke in their own way, and you try to accommodate that by understanding where they're coming from. But can you imagine if I would have gone there and imposed my will on them? How are they going to treat me? And
I can imagine a knife at your throat.
Yeah, you're right. Even in Afghanistan, I remember a couple of times I used to have dinner with the locals there, and I trust them enough that they just like me for the fact that I'm just a human being like them. They didn't look at me as an American. They looked at me as a human being, because I was talking to them as equal. Just because they don't have running water or they don't have infrastructure, whatever, that makes them less. And this is where our problem is with the foreign policy structure, because you got individuals who never been on the ground to understand.
Right.
And that's where part of where the problem is. You got, a policy maker or a decision maker in Washington making a decision based on reports. He or she never saw the reality on the ground. And this is one thing, if China wants to succeed into this, and it looks to me that the Taliban are sending the right signals to China. Because when you have that saying China is a friendly country, you start your statement with that, you're already establishing. So to me, I interpret this as a positive sign if China plays its card right.
Well, maybe the conclusion here is the United States has lost 2,442 soldiers to death, 20,666 wounded, and a cost of $2.26 trillion. And that's the cost of war. And what else could that money have been spent on?
And what did they get? What did we get out of it?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
To say. Most Americans, have no idea. It's not, some of them do, some don't, but majority, they need to wake up to see the reality for their tax money, your tax money. If you happen to be in the US here watching this, your tax money is being used in some unrelated issues to you, to your welfare, to your family, to your business, to your financial health.
Yeah, the question is not how does this benefit the American people, because clearly it doesn't.
It doesn't. So, and that is where the challenge is. And I'm sure if China plays its card right, it will be beneficial. So,
question time.
Let's do some questions here, and we'll move forward with this. Wamu, thank you for being here, and good to see you again. So the question is, there is one unknown in the post-US China plans for Afghanistan, in my opinion, and that is Pakistan's ability to control groups in their country. How do you think Pakistan can solve this? Yeah, that is an interesting question, because Here is the reality about Pakistan. There are certain elements. Remember, Taliban is not one small entity. There are certain factions within Pakistan that can wreak havoc inside Pakistan. And Islamabad wants to make sure that doesn't happen, because Pakistan is a tribal society, and anytime you are in a tribal society, is the factions that control what's going on in the center. And I'll give you just an example. If you are in Pakistan, hypothetically, you are in Islamabad, and you want to implement policy A, okay? And the policy A has to be in location B somewhere. You have to get the sort of authorization and approval of the locals. And when I say local sheikh, local tribe, local chief, local whatever you want to call it, because that's how they work, that's how they operate. Once you secure that support, you'll be fine. So for the Taliban, for Pakistan, by them suggesting the peace talks in Islamabad, they wanted to ensure that no internal havoc will be emerged inside Pakistan. The advantage Pakistan has now is that China is doing projects in Pakistan. People are watching the economic changes that's taking place. And this is why India went ahead on a rampant sort of declaration that they don't like BRI, they don't like, because they're seeing the changes in Pakistan. So that's where I see the issue. But I think Pakistan can manage to maintain peace all around, and for also between the Taliban and China to move forward. All right, next question. I hope I answered your question, Wamo. Kwan, good to see you, Kwan Lee. Your statement or your question. Hello, gentlemen. What do you think of the Dushanbe summit on July 14, 2021? Lavrov, Wang Yi, and the stance and the integration of Afghanistan into the BRI with the CPEC, with the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor extended into Afghanistan soon? That is an interesting question. The question has two folds to it: one geopolitical, one economic.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, indeed, it was a conversation about that one back then, because Mr. Wang, I've learned one thing, Ross, that Chinese name, they start with surname first, then the first name left.
And his last name is Wang.
Wang, yeah. Yeah, I made a mistake on that back on Mr. Lee. No. Lee is his first name per se. So anyway, that was it was a conversation. And this is where I see personally, and again, my opinion, this is where I see the advantage China will have, especially when it comes down to BRI, because Afghanistan is going to provide a route in the middle, cutting all distances from around the Indian Ocean and so forth.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect.
And it's already in the works.
Yeah. Let alone, Afghanistan has gas, has a lot of natural resources underground that have not been tapped into yet, because the terrain is rugged. So it will make perfect sense.
Dangerous.
Yeah.
With the Taliban.
Yeah. But if the Taliban controlling that, you got it protected. So. Antonio Lim, good to see you, Antonio. The question is, U.S. had meetings with the Taliban. Is it possible they had an agreement for the Taliban to sow terror in Xinjiang in exchange for the return of the land by the U.S.? No, because here's
very unlikely.
Yeah, it's unlikely. But here's the thing. Any meetings that took place between the Taliban and the U.S., the Taliban never trusted the Americans. It was never trust there. Even when I was there was a conversation about how about reaching out to the Taliban. They don't trust the Americans, period. So I don't see that. I don't see that happening. Next question. Andreas Summerfield, good to see you. The question is, what is the strategic position of Japan, and why did they remove the one China policy? Yeah. Well, Japan is what's the word I can find for this? Japan is useless. when it comes down to, I mean, mind you, just for those who know the history a little bit of that part of the world, Japan has always tried to sabotage behind the scenes the rapprochement between North and South Korea. They never wanted the Koreas to be one. Whoever thought?
Because of the bad history.
Yeah. Japan always acted behind the scenes, never wanted that. That's why they jumped quickly on the Quad, and let alone the history between Japan and China and what the Japanese did to the Chinese. I mean, we all know that horrible history and the atrocities Japan committed.
Unspeakable atrocities. Yeah. Hundreds of thousands of people murdered.
Yeah. So I don't.
Just terrible.
Yeah, I don't see Japan playing any role whatsoever because Japan's influence in the region is diminishing very, very obviously and noticeably. So, next question, Anjun Deep. Good to see you, Anjun. The question is, hi, kindly please share your observations and comments on the recent Haiti assassination, and some culprits were caught later within the compound of the Embassy of Taiwan. Any impact on China? I am not aware of the part of Taiwan. What I'm aware of is that the operation was sort of funded by United Arab Emirates. And if you know what's in Arab Emirates, there are some missionaries from the United States that are having their headquarters over there. Eric Prince used to be there. So there are some Americans involved. They get in now to the bottom of some, they just arrested some people because this is a much bigger plot. Whether, the president, the former president or the deceased president of Haiti was leaning towards a dictatorship, if you will, because he banned the judges from the courts, and I mean he was getting into some policy that wasn't right. But as to this one for Taiwan, I am not aware of it, so I won't be able to speak on that. Something I don't know. So, but I do know that there are some operatives from Colombia, and some of the funding came through United Arab Emirates. So. Always, my answer to you, always follow the money.
You're right.
Next question. Ariel, good to see you, Ariel. A question. Do you both think China might be interested in exploiting lithium in Afghanistan for their IT sector?
Yeah.
That is a good question. And indeed, as a matter of fact, I did find out certain properties for lithium, what it can be used. Well, you don't have to look far to see the use for lithium from a military application, especially when it comes down to batteries.
Right.
So there is yes. The short answer is yes, big time, and China has the means to extract that stuff from underground. So. Next question.
Fact, they really changed. Yeah. They changed the whole world. When lithium became remarkably cheap, as opposed to $1,000 a pound to $30. I mean, they did some remarkable technology with lithium.
Well, I read some stuff about the military applications for lithium, and I can just see why China will, like any other country,
want it.
If you have access to it, you're gonna have to access it quickly. So, Carnivorous, good to see you, Carnivorous. And by the way, thank you for your comment. I remember reading one of your comments a couple of days ago. Question, with 60 deaths in the last 30 days due to terrorism, including 8 engineers, do you think Taliban will send militant into India, Kashmir, once they rule as a retaliation? No, I don't see that happening because Taliban doesn't want to get into all that. They won't. Now, if the Taliban's interests were threatened by India, yes, they will take action. And this will explain to you why India wanted to reach out first to Taliban, because India saw what's coming. Taliban will be in charge, but they're not going to send them. The Kashmir issue, India is some sort of putting a lid on it, and justly, if I may add, because the Kashmir will always be a hot flashpoint between Pakistan and India. So no, I don't see that happening. But unless, as I said earlier, Taliban interests are threatened. All right, next question. Akila, Sitham, good to see you here, and thank you for being here. So, question: if China and Taliban makes a deal, and if China invested in Afghanistan, will U.S. accuse and sanction China on sponsoring for terrorism?
No.
Yeah, that would be ridiculous for the United States to even consider, and China won't care. They won't care because there's one principle in international or global affairs. Always national interests comes first. That's just a rule of what international relations are all about. China is acting on behalf of its own interest.
As it should.
Yeah. Taliban are acting on behalf of their interests. So that's the bottom line to it. So the US coming and sanctioning, what for? I mean, it will be useless and it will be laughable because...
I think that's really the point. At this point, with the United States having completely failed, it would be laughable in the eyes of the entire world.
Yeah. Well, look like what the United States wanted to do to Germany regarding the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and threatened to sanction, and everybody was like shaking their heads. And usually when you act like that, and again, I'm an American and I will defend this country. As a matter of fact, to those who criticize that we are working for China, or which is
laughable,
which is pathetic. I forgive their ignorance. You know what I've done for this country, I won't say, but I put my life in line. So for those who say those kind of statements, they need to think twice because it's pathetic. But the idea of the United States just imposing its will on others, it won't work anymore. The reason being because the geopolitical shift that's taking place right now on the global level, it's not to the US favor. So China is going to worry about US sanctions. It will be, laughable, as I said. They're not going to worry about that. So next question, Dakian San, good to see you, Dakian. The question is, could you explain the relationship difference of Pakistan Taliban and Afghanistan Taliban? Yeah, there is a difference there. For those who do not know, when we mention Taliban, everybody thinks it's one same group. No, it is and it is not. The leadership of Taliban, some of them, not all, but the majority, the top, are in Pakistan. Okay, there are, of course, those in Afghanistan. And there is that coordination between the elements in Pakistan and elements in Afghanistan. And this is why Pakistan has to work a tightrope, not offending this, not offending that.
Yeah.
It's a very, very delicate, and for us in the West, we don't understand these dynamics. It's because we think, oh, just some homie group, whatever. No, it doesn't work that way. So it will be very interesting to see if the two can coordinate, which I believe they could. The reason being, as I said again, if the statement by Shaheen, the spokesperson for the Taliban, says that we see China, and I quote, we see China as a friendly country, that tells you right there is already a coordination between the two. So, MP, good to see you, MP. The question is, what level of communication exists between China and Taliban, if any?
Well, for sure something's going on because the contracts are already there.
Those are behind closed doors, behind the scenes, nothing official. Nothing will come up to the sort of on public yet. Not of now. The reason being because, remember, the US still withdrawing its forces, and also Taliban are not officially till they take over Kabul, because when you maintain control in the capital, it's over. So you won't say anything openly, but there are talks behind the scenes. Nicholas, good to see you, Nick, and thank you for your questions on the previous video. So I appreciate that. A question: do you think the reason America pulled out from Afghanistan is they are preparing to mobilize their forces to concentrate more on South China Sea and can be fighting on many fronts?
That's a good question.
It is a good question, but I will not go that direction. Yes, the changes in the South China Sea are moving forward. As a matter of fact, Ross, we're gonna have to do a video about. There are some statements in Washington right now saying that the United States will come into the aid of Philippines militarily, which those are just saber rattling.
Mm-hmm.
We all know what it means if that ever happens, and it won't happen. There won't be a war between China and Philippines. But yes, that part of your question is correct. There are things in Afghanistan, in South China Sea. But U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan is because the war is not winnable. We could either be there for the next 50 years if we have to, which won't happen. It's just because we don't know what to do. We didn't know what to do. It became at least apparent to me since 2007 that this is not going to be winnable. So no, I don't see the two together, because what the United States has at its disposal is just to move its Seventh Fleet. That's usually what they will do. But you're absolutely correct about the South China Sea. There are now tensions rising as to the war, because there are some European countries, including Britain, wants to send its ships into the water. And I don't think so that's going to settle well with China. We might see some reactions.
Well, the bad history between Opium War and the 100 years of humiliation and so on, the Chinese are not going to like the Great Britain sending military into their territory.
No, they won't. And China now is in position to not be quiet anymore. They're not being shy about it. So I don't see that the two linked. They are separate. Next question. Forrest Leaf. Good to see you, Forrest. And thank you for your questions on the videos, by the way. Your question. Beijing is concerned that Taliban will become a hub for East Turkestan movement. How can China and Afghanistan can build a long-lasting friendship? I won't put too much into that, because Taliban has a different agenda altogether. And one of the agendas for Taliban rather, is to maintain full control on Afghanistan. So as to be supporting other groups here and there, they're not going to be involved in that. Second thing is that Taliban sees the opportunity, economic one, through China. China will be able to build that infrastructure for them because they're good at that. And as I said again, because if Taliban saying that we see China as a friendly country, that's you read between the line right there. That's saying, hey, if you are coming to build, because the statement said China is a friendly country and we will welcome it for reconstruction and developing Afghanistan. So right there, the answer is right there. So I don't see that happening. Next question. Daniel, good to see you, Dan, and thank you for being here, and thank you for your question. Do you think China will make a condition to investments in Afghanistan that the Taliban ensure terrorists like ATM do not have any foothold in Afghanistan? Of course, anytime China gets involved in a project, they have to protect their investments. I'm certain of this. Now, one thing they can work out is, for example, to remember, there are some Chinese companies already reserved the right to mining in Afghanistan. So what Taliban will provide China that the regular government in Kabul cannot is security. That's what China will be after. And of course, if Taliban can provide that security, Taliban can also control if any group or any element will go into support of ATM, I ain't gonna be allowed. So because Taliban wouldn't want to lose face with China regarding the investments. I mean, don't get me wrong here. And for all our viewers, for all of you guys, don't get me wrong here. There is a risk involved in China being involved in Taliban. And I am sure authorities in Beijing have weighted the cost versus benefits of those risks. This is not an easy walk. It's not a cakewalk into Afghanistan, because the complexity of the country in Afghanistan. It's not an easy to untangle. But at the same time, if you have Taliban coming first and saying, we consider you as a friendly, that's a good sign.
We've seen in the history of Chinese investment that they've made a lot of risky investments. And sometimes they've had to renegotiate contracts as many as a dozen times because of default. And so the Chinese are pretty darn good at this.
That's correct. You look at I'm aware of one project in Sudan when China built some major highways there, whatever. And as tensions were in Darfur and all that, and yet they were able to do all that. So, next question. Barry, good to see you, Barry. Barry Quinn. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Yeah, Barry Quinn. Thank you for your question. How is India own BRI project on Iran going so far as Chabahar port? No. Okay, if I read, how is India own BRI project on Iran going so far as Chabahar port? No, India doesn't own it. India doesn't own it. India, at the beginning, entered into a project with Iran to allow it to manage, construct, build, and so forth Chabahar port. Okay, that was only as a counterbalance to Gwadar. The problem with India, it couldn't deliver. So what Iran ended up doing is kicking India out of certain aspects, not all of it, certain aspects of the project, because they couldn't fund it. Well, India doesn't have the resources China does when it comes down to Gwadar, for example. So that is where the issue. As a matter of fact, India right now is in talks with Iran. It's because India is kind of holding the end of the stick. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It's their policies are a mess. So no, I don't see, and they have no, what's the word I'm saying? They have no influence on BRI whatsoever. The influence have is that nothing's gonna come through their country, of course, or close by. That's all. Peter, good to see Peter Manuel. Good to see you here. We appreciate you being here. Question: if in a few years' time Taliban have majority rule and governance, what do you think their relationship with their neighbors be like? Love your show as always. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you for your question. It will be a relationship of sort of leave us alone, we will leave you alone. You know, if you want to do business with us, we'll do business with you. That's going to be straightforward. There is no Taliban, the way they operate, Taliban is, you know, get straight with them, tell them what you want, and see what their answer is. You know, if you don't like what they do or the way they approach certain things or whatever, then rethink your strategy before you even engage them. This is the mistake some entities made before. You know, even the US, you know, they will negotiate with the Taliban, but at the same time, they are dictating to Taliban, well, you only can approach this way, or you can only approach that way. Taliban saying, who wants that? You know, that's the, if the neighboring countries, which mainly is going to be what? India, of course, Pakistan, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, you know, they all know what the Taliban are capable of. But also Taliban is going to only operate within its own sphere of influence. It's all about interests. That's the key to that. Astra Rex, good to see you here, Astra. The question is, what will it be the economic effect of peace, Afghanistan in the regional countries?
Oh, good question.
That is a good one. Yeah, if you have a stable Afghanistan, it will reflect, it will vibrate across the region, because Afghanistan is it's a very complicated country, if I may use the term. And throughout history, most of the literally great powers, if I may use the term, even back then, they couldn't control it, they couldn't take over. And there is the reason why they call it the graveyard of the empires, for a reason. And history has proved that. So, and this is what I go back to my first statement. If China plays its card right, it could benefit from this. So how other countries going to benefit from that, from the stability? once Taliban takes over, and they will eventually, we might see different, because Taliban also, if I am to guess, they don't want to be seen as a pariah on the international stage. Yes, they are not going to get the representation a sovereign state will do, but who's to say? You never know. If things improve and conditions change, there might be some change to that. It's just going to be for a while. It'll be for a while. Jack Robert, good to see you, Jack. And I'm glad you were able to join us here. So, question: Ethiopia signed a military deal with Russia, as a matter of fact, they just did, with Russia, and talked to Sudan. Is Russia moving back in Northeast Africa? The U.S. being pushed out? Nile water politics. Yeah, you know what he's referring to here, Russ? He's referring to the issue of the Nile, the tensions that's taking place right now between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia, or Eritrea at some point. And all has to do with filling up the dam.
Yeah.
And that could trigger a war here. In Tigray right now, there are some problems. So Ethiopia end up signing a deal with Russia. Because they are seeing the changes that's going to lead into moving forward with what's taking place in the eastern part of Africa. So, let alone that China is already in Djibouti and Russia is already in Mali. So all those is paving the way for China for Russia to reinstate its presence once again in Africa. And this is why, remember, Ross, when we did the show about, is Africa the next theater for geopolitical competition? That's exactly
what.
Yeah,
it is.
And that's what this question is referring to. All right, we'll do one more question here before we go, because we're gonna have to go to take care of my other programs we have to do. Question from Cam 35 millimeters. Good to see you, Cam. The question is: India is part of the Quad, the BRICS, the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation, and the door still open to the RCP, the regional cooperation. Will Russia help India see the light and quit the Quad and make peace with China? Yeah. Only if India does, and I don't see India doing that, because India will not want to upset its master. Yeah, I just don't see that happening. Otherwise, why will they jump on the Quad if they had the intentions of moving that direction? Yes, they will go with some military hardware with Russia. As a matter of fact, they are thinking of purchasing the S-400 systems, which will be delivered, I think, by the beginning of next year, if I'm not mistaken. No, I don't see that happening. But the possibility that if they quit the Quad, that's going to upset the U.S. and that's why we titled the last show India's Choice, the U.S. or China, because that's exactly what it is. I don't know if you got a chance to watch that video or not. All right, one more question. Let's see, who's this lucky person? Tokayer. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Thank you for being here. So, the question is: U.S., UK, NATO will react to the losing influence in Afghanistan. There is nothing they can do. What are they going to do? I mean, when you as a country or an alliance or an entity, whatever you want to call it, when you live in the manner in which the United States left Afghanistan, that's plain and simple is defeat. So what they're going to do? Yes, they try to ask Turkey, a NATO member, a Muslim country, to protect the airport, but Turkey is going to have to think hard and twice, and probably Taliban is going to warn them or give them some messages behind closed doors that it is to your benefit if you leave Afghanistan, because Taliban made it clear any foreign forces will be considered as invaders. So that will be that way. So we want to thank you as always for being here. And like every Friday, Ras and I, we can't wait to get on the screen with you guys because we truly, truly appreciate your support. Please, please spread the word about the channel because we need to grow the subscriber base. And your word means a lot. So we can't thank you enough. And please keep those questions coming because those are, I'm learning from them.
And I'm learning from
right,
as well.
We're really learning from those. So we can't thank you enough. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, whatever part of the world you are. Until next time. And as always,
stay informed.